So in this sketch, using gouache, we're going to do a little landscape scene. We're going to have some nice big sky, a bit of a background hill. Then we're going to have some trees here. There's some houses. And then there's some people on the road. A bit of a field here and a bit of a field on the left-hand side. So that's pretty much the idea behind the painting. And let's see how that goes. So first thing we're going to do then is just do some work on the sky. So we'll just, I'm using gouache, so just to do these quick sketches, just gives you a nice insight into the composition. Have a look at the colors, and if any one of these takes your fancy, then you can always convert your quick color sketch into a full painting. The gouache is opaque, so of course I can go over anything that I've done if I want to. So next thing we're going to do then is we're going to add some white and just liven up that sky a little bit. Right, so a little bit of white we're going to mix in there. So the white, I'm using some acrylic white with my gouache. I've run out of the gouache white, but the acrylic works just as well. The paints are interchangeable. It's also water-based, so not a problem there. And right, so this was being done on recycled paper, so it does have some strange textures and things that come as a result. And what I'm going to do then with my sky is we're just going to do something like that. Right, so there's our sky, nicely done, nice and quick, and we're just doing that to block it in. Now what we need to do is do that background. So to get the background right and to create some depth, I'm going to use some French ultramarine with some crimson and then some white. So the whole idea, push it back with the blue, create like a purple, a nice purple, and then or slightly bluish purple, which will then be for the background hills. We'll go over that again with our trees, so not a problem. And because it's quite far away, we want to include a bit of white in there, so I'm just going to then add a bit of white into the mix. Right, so that's, and then I think a little bit more white. What the white also does is it serves to push the hills back. So when I add the white, it'll also just help to create some distance. And of course, you know that as objects move away, the colors are flatter. So by creating that flat kind of look, that also helps to push it back a little bit further. So there we go. So we're pushing that a bit back. I think I'll leave that dark there. So there we're pushing back the hills. That's coming on nicely. And then what we can look at doing is around the base is maybe just have a few lines that are a bit darker, maybe to add the idea that there's another landmass in between, and that will also help to create that depth. Okay, so there we have our background, the hills, and something interesting. Now what we need to do is have a look at putting in kind of the markers where we're going to have our houses and the trees. So what I want to do is just let that blue dry a bit. So maybe I'm going to focus a bit more on the foreground now. So I'm going to do a dab of some yellow ochre and a dab of some blue here. I'm just mixing in the colors that I've had before, so over time the colors get more interesting as well. So this is going to be a fairly flat kind of field, so we're not going to do too much detail in here, and you'll see I'm using quite a large brush. And then we're also going to have a field off to this side, and that's going to come down a bit there. And then just behind this will be another field sort of in the background there. So that's going to be our kind of field, and what I'm going to do is just bump up the color a bit there on the field. So I'm going to go with some medium yellow and some ultramarine, and that's just going to give it a little bit of a greenish color to this field, but still quite yellow. And now what we're going to do is to create the depth. What we do is we just add a bit of white now, especially to the top of the hill, and then it comes down, and I'm going to do the same on the other side. So we have that hill, and then as the colors get closer, we have a bit more detail and it's more defined. So at the top of the hill it's kind of white, and now we haven't determined the light, but I think the light is coming from the left hand side. So what I'm going to do then is just, so I don't work off a reference here, I'm just doing a quick sketch, so we can pretty much change it as we go. So that looks fine, and then on the left hand side this is much flatter, so we're just going to do a much flatter horizon line there, so something like that. So here we have this field coming up to the road on the right hand side, and then as it gets closer, maybe we want to just introduce a little bit of red. So I've got some bright red that I'll be introducing, and that's just going to be because this is a bit closer, and then further away it's more red. So right there we have the field, and now we need to put in the road. So the road, what I am going to do this time, sorry about that, what I am going to do this time is go with some burnt umber. Right, and that's just to help with the road, and some yellow ochre. So there's the yellow ochre, and if you can hear any scratching noises, it's just the guinea fowl on the roof. Right, so, and they seem to be having a party this afternoon. Don't know what the celebration is, wasn't invited. But they are rather noisy, so it sounds like the whole family's out. So this is going to be the road, and the road's going to sort of head down that way, and so I'm going to add a bit of ultramarine into that burnt umber just to darken it a bit. Right, so there we have the road. It's going to come from there and there, and then it heads down there. So there we have our road, and what I'm going to do, see if I can just pick up one or two other colors there. Right, so we're just blocking in the color so we can see what that's going to look like. So we have the field here, which is really nice. We have another the other part of the field there. We're going to have some people on the road, and then we're going to have some houses. So let's finish off this. And now what we need to do is put in the houses, and we delayed them just waiting for the background to dry. So I'm pretty sure that's dry enough. I'm going to change my brush, and I'm going to head over for some white. And what we wanted to do was just, have some houses there, another house over there. Kind of just put the houses where you want them. Another house over there. So basically we're just going to have this little community, and you can kind of make it up as you go. That's what I do. So we just get the idea that's in our head onto the paper. Right, so there we have some houses, and now we want to have some people in the road. So for now what I'm going to do is just go with a darker color, and what we were looking at was people here kind of talking, and then kind of moving down the road and chatting. So quite a nice chatty community. And now I need to put a couple of roofs on, and for some reason we always go to a deep red, so I'm going to go with the crimson, and then what I'm going to do is just keep that a nice rich crimson. So I'm going to mix a little bit of burnt umber with that, and that's going to give us a nice rich brown. And we're just going to make some roofs there, a roof there. So there we have some houses, and you'll see I'm not going for any great detail, and the reason for that is because we're just doing a quick blocking sketch. So we don't need too much detail. So there we have our houses, and now what we need to do is finish the people in the foreground. And of course people generally like a bit of color in their clothing, so what we need to do is introduce some color there. Need to get a finer paintbrush because this is getting a little bit fine here in the foreground, so get a finer brush, and then we're just going to put together some people. So there we already have somebody, there's another person, there's another person, there's somebody, and that's also giving us a sense of scale as we do that. Now I'm also just going to maybe just create some highlights so that it looks like they're walking away from us, as it turns out. So let's do it, and you'll see we're just creating the impression of people. We're not going into too much detail. So there we go, we've got some people, they're coming on nicely. We'll just do it. So that's it. So you'll see we're just a series of lines really, and that's creating the impression of people, which is really great. And right, so that's our community of people, and I'm tempted to do a bit more, just so that they stand out a bit. Now there's two ways to to get them to stand out. The one is, you know, to keep adding highlights, and the other way is to change the color around them, the background color. So I'm going to change my brush, and now we had that nice rich color with the burnt umber, and we added some ultramarine and some crimson to create this really rich dark brown. And now what I'm going to do is just use that to create some shadows. So that looks like you know, we just got something happening there. Then also along the side of the road we'll have some shadow. Yeah, so, and in that shadow, of course, you can't have dark without some light. So I'm just going to mix that up, and I don't really want to go for just white there to highlight. And you'll see now, so I'm just creating this like a blend of browns and colors, and that's looking really nice. So that creates the impression that there is maybe a verge to this road. Right, so now by not having this flat road, it starts to look a bit interesting, because you know, the eye does enjoy interesting colors. So now you'll actually see that as we keep working on this, that the people in the picture will start being easier to identify as people. So so you'll see how I'm just going with the brush and not doing anything of real note, just blocking in color again. And you'll see that as I create these spaces around the people that are a little bit darker, and then on the other side of the people, perhaps on the road, we have this slightly lighter section, and that's where the sun is hitting the road, and we just highlight that. So we just want to create an interesting textured road. So there we have our textured road, and we do need to highlight those people more. But to highlight the people, what I'm actually going to do now is not go lighter, but we're going to go darker. And that's just because as they get further away, they kind of become more like just silhouettes. Then, so we just create these vertical silhouettes. Right, so that's, and then we just do a bit of shading. And there we kind of have our bunch of people. And then of course, you know, what would a roadside be without a fence? So let's add our fence to the side of the road, and I'm just going to mix that up. Once again, we're going to go with that dark burnt umber, ultramarine, and a little bit of crimson. So we want to create these really cool fence posts, and we have to put in a lot, so maybe we don't do them too close to each other. And also we're not going to make them uniformly spaced or sizes, because the ground isn't uniformly sized. And then we turn the corner, and then right, so there we have the fence going down that side, and now we need to create a fence on the other side. So we'll do that. And we'll also then kind of get smaller as we go. So there we have our fence, and as you know, with a fence you might want to just give the hint of you know, maybe there's some wire that's running between the posts, and to do that, and the thing is that we don't have to make it you know, like perfectly detailed and visible all the way. We just need to create the impression, and there you need a bit of a steady hand, and you just want to do quick strokes. You don't want to think about it too much. So something along those lines creates the impression that we have a, you know, some wire. And remember, this is just a preliminary sketch, so you don't want to be spending all day coming up with the right impression of wire. And you'll see we're not going to even do it along the whole fence. We're just going to do it here in the beginning. Right, so there we have that impression of the fence coming along there. Now I've gone with white, but sometimes what you might want to do is go with like a more bluey white color of wire. Right, so there we have our fence. So you get the idea that there is a fence. As it dries though, what you're going to notice is that the white might fade, and then you might just need to come back and do it again. Right, so we have that. Now what we need to do is add a highlight to those fence posts. And to do that, we could do some yellow ochre, or we could take some brown, mix it up in the white, and then so I've taken some of the brown, mixed it up with white. So there we have some highlights on the fence posts, and we'll do the same here. It's not perfect, but you get the idea that we have a fence there and we have the post. Then what we can do on the houses is just put in some signs that they actually are houses that work, so that they have a door and a window and a. But once again, we're not trying to paint them. We're just you know, we're just, you'll see I'm just putting in a series of lines and dots, and that's creating this impression. So there we have the houses, and yeah, now what I'm going to do, the people for me are just needing a bit of attention here. make sure that they all have a head. So we're just going to make that a just need some dark. And normally you're going to find dark, you know, people, if it's hair, probably be a bit darker. Right, so there we have the people, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of my yellow, my medium yellow, to some of the people. Just a hint of color. So the color we give them, we want to try and give the people a color that wouldn't normally be associated with the fields or the farm. So we look for, you know, some brighter colors. So I'm going to add some brilliant red here. And yeah, maybe they've got a bit of red in their outfit, but the brilliant red would right, so there we go. We've got just a bit of color that'll just break the monotony there of the browns. And then I'm going to go back to the medium yellow, and there we go. So now we've got some items that are really popping. And as I said, this is just a rough reference that might be used for painting. So there we go. We've got the people coming down the road. We've got the houses in the background, so there's obviously something happening. And now what we need to do is just fix up the scenery a bit. So to do that, we're going to take some medium yellow and we're going to mix it in with a bit of white and a bit of something else. So there's our, and then we're going to and the reason why we want to do that is because you know, it's nature, so nothing is flat, and by doing this we can create some interesting colors, and then hopefully some interesting points of interest for people looking at the painting. So I'm going to come right down here to the fences, and I'm going to go a little bit darker on the dark side. So on this side of the hill we're going to go a little bit darker than on the other side. And then maybe we put in an undulation or two. Right, so you'll see now that the hill is looking a bit more interesting. Let's go and okay, so yeah, that's already looking a bit more interesting on this side. And then what we'll do is we'll go very bold on the sun side, and that will definitely, you know, kind of give you the feeling that that field does slope away on the one side. And then on the left hand side of that road we'll do the same, except we're going to have it slightly darker coming towards the road. And you'll see once again we're mixing it up so it creates this interesting space, so it's not a flat hill. And then when it comes to the highlight here, we'll just run the highlight kind of across the top. That'll also create a bit of depth. So what I'm going to do, just want to add a bit more white to my palette. And right. Now what we'll do, and we'll just do some intense highlight at the top of the hill over there. Right, so there we have this interesting hill with stuff happening, and I'm going to just do some more intense highlight there, and then some intense highlight in the field. So we're not really painting anything, we're just letting the colors kind of fall where they will, and that, as you can see, is creating these interesting pieces. And then I'm just going to roughen up the edge because we don't want this to be a sudden stop on the side and then the road starts. So I'm just going to use some uneven strokes here and a bit of highlight. Yeah, so we just want to create areas of interest, and that's pretty much what we're doing here now. Right, so there we've created a bit of interest. We have this wide open road and the people are walking down in the background. Okay, so now what we need to add are some trees, now that we've kind of got the composition going. So let's get some trees going. And we're going to just use some ultramarine, and we'll just kind of create the illusion of trees perhaps more. So there's some trees there, there's some trees there, and it's not just behind the house. Maybe there's a bunch of trees there as well. So yeah, so there we have some trees coming into the picture. They're quite subtle, and they're not overwhelmingly bright. Right, so there we have the trees. You'll see these trees don't even have tree trunks at the moment. So we're just creating the impression that there is some life in the old landscape, and here where we have a lot of white space, maybe there we want to make it look like we have a little bit of trees happening here. Right, so there we have some trees. something there in the foreground, something there, and then I'll just have something along there. And then what we can also do here, because kind of have the road stopping up ahead here, and we'll also just, so there we have our trees, and what we need to do now is just give them a bit of a highlight. So let's do that. Let's give our trees maybe a bit zealous on some of it. So there we have some highlights, some trees. What I do want to do here is get rid of the excess. Let's do some more trees. And then we want to, around the base, you want to go a little bit darker on the trees in the distance, because generally you'd be looking into the bottom of the tree, there'd be a lot of shadow. So in that space, so there we have our trees, our little community of trees here is growing, and it's starting to look like it's quite a leafy suburb. But yeah, that would be you know, just a very informal sketch into, you know, a little road, some houses, some people. If you feel like the people are in too much of a line, then that's not a problem. I'm getting the feeling that they might be. So what we'll do is we'll just let's just add somebody to the side there. So they're not all kind of in the same line. You'll see these people are kind of all on the side of the same side of the road here, and then maybe over there we'll just add somebody that's not on the same side. Of course, if we add somebody, we must ground them with a bit of a shadow. And so there we go. So that actually does make the world of difference. Also, I think what we can do is make the fence a bit higher. According to this fence, it's if those are the people, then you know the fence should be higher than their knees. So we'll just make that a little bit taller. Right, so that's looking a bit better, and then also the fence on the far side. Some of those a bit too tall. Right, so there we have, and then of course if we going to have these fence poles, you should put some kind of a shadow in just to show that they do touch the ground. Right, so there we have some of that. So yeah, that's the quick sketch then, just to you know, just on the road. The one area that still bugs me a little bit is in the background there, which is this area here. It's a bit too white, so I'm going to just knock it down, and I'm also going to send it back with a bit of ultramarine blue. So that's, there we go. So now the focus is back here, and basically you get led by the road with the people. There's some houses, some trees, and there's a little town. So let's just kill some of those white spots because they are detracting. And then what we could also do just there in that little piece there, just for some trees. So the medium yellow just kind of gives the sun a bit of a boost, and right. So there we go, there we have our quick field with some houses and some people walking down the road. Yeah, that's pretty much that sketch. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for watching. I've just moved the camera and I'm just going to come in a little bit straighter then so you can see the picture straight on.